with the biggest rapper at the time. Everything's great. By the way, isn't she? Lauren is the one that introduced Nip to Diddy. Diddy couldn't even get to Nip, even though he had ties in L.A. It was Lauren that brought Nip.
No, I'm saying Lauren introduced me to Puff.
Oh, got you.
I mean, I knew Puff, but it was more of a personal relationship after, we was at Cassie's birthday.
I went to a seminar about death.
Okay, you have to tell. Well, you're just telling me this now.
I know, yeah.
Please share. Why?
I have a friend.
Why were you there, and what did you learn?
I learned that no one really dies, and that it's just an experience in the physical form, and we're attached to our personalities, but that we're just souls, and that we continue and continue.
When the story of Nipsey Hussle is told, people like to focus on the polished version, the interviews, the awards, the dedication to his community. But behind all that was a world way more layered, way more complicated, and way more guarded than most ever realized, especially when it came to the relationship that defined a huge part of his public image, Nipsey and Lauren London. From the outside, people saw a picture-perfect partnership, a couple that moved with purpose and stayed in their own lane. But folks who were close, the ones who saw the day-to-day moments, always hinted there was way more going on than the public ever got to hear. Nipsey operated with a certain code, raw, strategic, and always 10 steps ahead. Lauren carried her own code too, built on privacy, image control, and preserving what the world thought it knew about the two of them. That combination created something powerful, but also something complicated. As the years passed, a small circle around Nipsey kept pointing at a tension that never got spoken about publicly. Not drama in the messy tabloid sense, but tension in the sense of weight, decisions, conversations, moves that stayed behind closed doors because they didn't match the polished narrative. Nipsey was expanding. He was leveling up in business, in ownership, in the influence he carried in LA and beyond. With that came more eyes, more expectations, and more people trying to attach themselves to the movement he built. And while Nipsey handled it with strategy, Lauren handled it with silence. That silence became part of the mystery. When Nipsey's bodyguard, someone who watched everything unfold from a front row angle, later spoke on the situation, people were stunned. Not because he revealed something explosive or messy, but because he confirmed what insiders already whispered. There was a truth Lauren never wanted out in the open. A truth about how much pressure she was under, how many complicated choices had to be made, and how much she hid from the world to keep his legacy as clean as possible. See, when someone becomes bigger than life, the people connected to them have to play roles they never signed up for. Lauren wasn't just his partner. She became the protector of his image, the guardian of every detail the public wasn't meant to see. That meant hiding moments of vulnerability, downplaying internal tension, and carrying decisions that would have flipped the narrative if they went public. The bodyguard made it clear. Nothing about that relationship was simple. Nothing about what Lauren held back was petty. It was about preserving a legend, even when the truth didn't always match the highlight reel. And that's where the story starts. Not with gossip, not with shock value, but with the unseen weight of being tied to a figure the world wanted to turn into a symbol.
People forgetting it was her and Lauren London. I just find it so funny how people are always omitting names and not really looking into the true facts.
A seminar about death.
Okay, you have to tell. Well, you're just telling me this now.
I know, yeah.
Please share.
Why? I have a friend.
Why were you there, and what did you learn?
I learned that no one really dies, and that it's just an experience in the physical form, and we're attached to our personalities, but that we're just souls, and that we continue and continue and continue.
Lauren kept things hidden for a reason, and according to the ones who witnessed the real-life chapters, those reasons weren't small. To understand what Lauren was hiding, you have to understand the environment Nipsey lived in. Not the music industry version, but the neighborhood reality he never abandoned. Nipsey wasn't someone who cut ties with where he came from just because he made it. That loyalty was part of why people respected him, but that same loyalty brought risks, obligations, and unpredictable dynamics. The bodyguard explained that the pressure came from every direction. Business partners, street ties, family expectations, industry obligations. Nipsey was juggling all of it, and Lauren was watching all of it happen in real time. There were moments where Nipsey was stretched thin, traveling, building businesses, handling meetings, recording music, and managing the politics of being someone who carried influence in multiple worlds at once. Lauren became the one who had to absorb the hits that came from being attached to someone with so much weight on their shoulders. The public saw a peaceful household, but insiders said the two often had to navigate outside factors that tried to pull them in different directions. And Lauren took it upon herself to hide that strain from the world, not because she was protecting herself, but because she believed protecting him was protecting everything he stood for.
Nip had no ego. So, you know what I'm saying? Like Nip came to me and said, I want you to mentor me. You know, I want to get into real estate. I want you to teach me all your, you know what I mean, like your business secrets. You know what I'm saying? I was like, whenever you got questions, pull up. And then on his last album, people do not know this. Somebody tried to jerk me, but I fixed it. I actually am one of the executive producers of Nipsey Hussle's last album.
Victory Lap.
Yeah, Victory Lap. So a lot of people don't know this. We got them to change it. In Wikipedia, somebody over at the label tried to leave my name out, but he came to me and said, I want you to be a part of helping me finish up this album. And so I was a part of not just the records I was on with him on his last album. He was like, yo, I'm a big fan of like Life After.
According to The Bodyguard, there were times when Nipsey wanted to step back, disconnect, or move differently. But the momentum he built didn't allow him to slow down. That created a stress that Lauren didn't want people to know existed. The world wanted Nipsey to be unstoppable, unshakable, always in control. But nobody can carry that without a price. Lauren saw the price. She saw the toll. And she chose silence over exposing what he was struggling with. There was also the pressure of being tied to someone seen as a role model for an entire community. Every move Nipsey made got analyzed. Every decision he took became part of a bigger narrative. Lauren had to constantly calculate what could be public and what needed to stay protected. When she hid certain truths, it wasn't to manipulate a story. It was to prevent outsiders from twisting the story into something that undermined his purpose. Most people don't realize how much responsibility comes with being connected to a public icon. It's not just love, it's politics, image, expectations. For Lauren, it became a balancing act of maintaining peace in a world that rarely offered it. The Bodyguard revealed that she was often the one smoothing out tension behind the scenes, stopping issues from escalating, and shielding Nipsey from extra weight when he was already carrying too much. That's the truth she kept hidden. Not a scandal, not a betrayal, but the fact that their reality was way heavier than the world ever imagined, and she took on more of that weight than she ever let on. The Bodyguard's revelations hit harder because he wasn't speaking as an outsider. He was someone who spent years watching the movement up close. He saw the arguments that weren't about disrespect, but about exhaustion. He saw the late-night conversations about fear, frustration, and responsibility that never reached the public. And according to him, Lauren became the quiet stabilizer, the one trying to hold everything together even when the pressure kept rising. One of the biggest truths she concealed was how dangerous Nipsey's position really was. Not in the sense of wild Hollywood stories, but in the real-world sense of what comes with influence, loyalty, and visibility. Nipsey was moving in areas where every decision mattered. He had loyalties that couldn't be broken, business deals that needed constant attention, and a reputation that followed him everywhere. The Bodyguard said Lauren understood the risk better than anyone, and she carried a fear she couldn't publicly show. A lot of people romanticize being with someone who has power or influence, but the Bodyguard explained that with Nipsey, the weight was different. Every time he left the house, every time he had a meeting.
Now, you taking a spiritual person who's asking for something. He said, I wanted that same feel as life after death. That same feel was that Biggie got and he went on to sell about 10 million albums or 10 million copies. I was saying, you gotta watch what you say to demons, because it just might come true.
Every time he moved around the city, she felt that tension. She didn't want people to know how heavy that fear was because she didn't want anyone to think Nipsey wasn't the strong, controlled figure the world admired. She hid her fear to protect his image, not because she wanted to pretend, but because she understood how important his presence was to the people he inspired. There were also truths about their communication that she kept private. Nipsey was focused on building something bigger than himself. He had long-term vision, long-term goals. Lauren supported that, but it wasn't always easy. There were sacrifices on both sides, and she never wanted the public to see the cracks. She didn't want people twisting their private challenges into something negative. The Bodyguard said she was extremely protective of Nipsey's reputation, not for Hollywood reasons, but because she truly believed in what he was trying to accomplish. In his words, she carried the weight he didn't have time to carry. That meant keeping things stable, keeping the home grounded, keeping outside noise away. It also meant burying her own frustrations, hiding her fatigue, and pretending she had everything under control even when she didn't. The truth she kept hidden was that she was overwhelmed. Not because Nipsey was a problem, but because the world around him made everything harder. When people saw her silent, composed, strong, they thought it meant everything was perfect. But according to the Bodyguard, that silence was her shield. It was her way of protecting the man she loved, the legacy he was building, and the image people needed him to have. After Nipsey's passing, Lauren's silence took on a whole new meaning. People praised her strength, but insiders said that strength came from years of training herself to hide heavy truths. She wasn't new to carrying weight. She had been carrying it long before tragedy struck. The Bodyguard explained that what she kept hidden wasn't some secret scandal, but the emotional burden of being tied to someone whose life demanded constant vigilance. The world expected Lauren to be the rock, the calm one, the poised one. But behind that, she was dealing with trauma from years of worrying about Nipsey's safety, years of watching him move in risky environments, years of shielding him from extra pressure. When everything finally collapsed, she didn't want anyone to know just how much fear she had lived with. She didn't want people rewriting Nipsey's story into something dark or chaotic because of the pain she carried. There were quiet struggles she never spoke about publicly. Moments where Nipsey's responsibilities took him away for long stretches. Moments where the weight of being the partner of a community figure became overwhelming. She hid all of it because exposing the emotional strain would have shifted the narrative from Nipsey's mission to personal drama, something she refused to allow. The Bodyguard emphasized that Lauren wasn't hiding anything malicious. She was protecting the legacy of someone she loved. She knew that once the world got a hold of certain details, they wouldn't handle them with respect. They'd twist them for clicks, gossip, and narratives that didn't honor the truth. So she kept things close. She kept them buried. Another thing she held back was how much Nipsey relied on her. Not in a dependent way, but in the sense that she became his balance. She helped him decompress, process, and breathe. People think the strong ones don't need support, but the Bodyguard said Nipsey leaned on her more than anyone realized. And she never shared that because she didn't want the public to view him as anything other than the leader he was. There were plans, conversations, long-term visions Nipsey and Lauren discussed privately, dreams they never spoke about publicly because they didn't want outside interference. They were building something that went far beyond celebrity. Lauren protected those conversations with everything she had. And finally, there was the emotional reality she lived with. The constant fear that the world around Nipsey would one day take him away. She never wanted anyone to know how deeply that fear shaped her daily life. According to the Bodyguard, that was the biggest truth she kept hidden. The quiet dread that came with loving someone who was loved by millions, but targeted by responsibilities, expectations, and risks that few could ever understand. When the Bodyguard finally spoke about all this, it wasn't to expose Lauren or create turmoil. It was to explain why she moved the way she did, why she protected Nipsey with such intensity, why she stayed quiet even when the world wanted answers, and why she carried herself with such composure through situations most people would break under. He made it clear that Lauren wasn't hiding a scandal. She was hiding the emotional architecture that held Nipsey's world together. Most people underestimate how isolating it is to be connected to someone who becomes a symbol. When the world turns a person into an icon, the people closest to them stop being seen as individuals. They become extensions of the legend. They lose room to have emotions, insecurities, or frustrations. Lauren experienced that more intensely than anyone realized. Every move she made got analyzed. Every expression got dissected. Every moment of silence turned into speculation, so she learned to keep everything inside, to let very few people into the reality behind closed doors. The Bodyguard called it emotional armor. He described days where Nipsey was stretched thin and Lauren stepped in to smooth the chaos. Days where outside problems created tension, not between them personally, but in the environment surrounding them. She kept those moments private because showing the reality might have shattered the public's idealized version of him, something she refused to let happen. She put his mission before her comfort. One of the deepest truths she kept hidden, according to him, was just how much responsibility she carried after his passing. The public saw her step into a role of strength, but they didn't see the weight behind it. She wasn't just grieving a partner, she was protecting a legacy, shielding her children, maintaining family unity, and navigating a world ready to twist any slip into controversy. People kept asking why she didn't speak more, why she didn't go public with details, why she didn't turn her pain into interviews or memoirs. The Bodyguard said she stayed silent for the same reason she had stayed silent all those years before, because she believed Nipsey's truth deserved protection, not exploitation. She didn't hide because she had something to run from. She hid because the world had something to take, control of the narrative. She wasn't going to let that happen. She kept the most personal details locked away, not because they were messy, but because they were sacred. That's the part most people never understood. The truth she kept hidden wasn't a secret about Nipsey. It was the depth of what she carried for him, the emotional sacrifices she made to keep his story clean, and the psychological toll of being the one person who saw how much pressure he was under. The Bodyguard said she held that world together until the very end, and she continued holding it afterwards because she believed that was the only way to honor him. Looking back at everything revealed, the picture becomes much clearer. What Lauren kept hidden wasn't drama, scandal, or betrayal. It was vulnerability. It was the unseen struggle of loving someone who lived with a mission bigger than both of them. It was the emotional exhaustion she carried while holding an entire narrative together. The Bodyguard's perspective didn't expose her. It highlighted her strength in a way the public never fully recognized. He explained that the world only saw the final version of their relationship, the polished photos, the interviews, the small glimpses on social media. But behind those carefully protected moments was a reality shaped by pressure from the streets, pressure from the industry, pressure from fame, and pressure from the responsibility of uplifting an entire community. Nipsey wasn't living a normal life, so their relationship didn't get to be normal either. And Lauren understood that better than anyone. The truth she kept hidden was the emotional reality behind the image, the fear she lived with, the sacrifices she made, the loyalty she carried even when the world didn't know the full story. She shielded Nipsey from extra weight because she believed in his purpose. She shielded her family from chaos because she wanted stability. And she shielded his legacy because she knew how quickly the world can twist a story when given the chance. People often say that real strength is loud, visible, easy to spot, but in Lauren's case, strength was silence. Strength was withholding details that could have earned sympathy, but would have complicated the story Nipsey left behind. Strength was managing grief in private while the world watched every move she made. The Bodyguard's revelation showed that the truth she kept hidden was rooted in protection, not secrecy, in preserving respect, not hiding mess. And when you look at everything through that lens, the narrative shifts. Instead of asking what she hid, the real question becomes how much she carried, how much she sacrificed, and how much she protected without ever needing credit. Her silence wasn't avoidance, it was loyalty. Her privacy wasn't secrecy, it was protection. Her restraint wasn't weakness, it was discipline. The Bodyguard didn't expose Lauren. He exposed the weight of the world she held to make sure Nipsey's legacy stayed untouched by outside noise. And in a world where people overshare for attention, her decision to keep the hardest parts private might be the strongest thing about her. If you've watched this far, drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Your support keeps these stories alive. Stay locked in for the next deep dive.